hear the dogs.
I see numbers moving.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if I got anything to say.
No.
So we've been-
Got it right here.
Sure.
In certain sections.
No. I was looking for some minutes. Stretch.
It's the only exercise I get, so it's good.
You know how to make everybody get quiet, Lauren.
It's hidden talent.
Rid of a hot mic. I will call to order the regular scheduled meeting of the Maumelle Planning Commission, January 23rd, 2020. Do we have any announcements, Mr. Neri?
No, Mr. Chairman, no announcements this evening.
All right, I'll move on to approval of the minutes. Commissioners, you've been provided those in your packet. Does anyone have any corrections or changes?
Make a motion we accept as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. All right, minutes are approved. See no public comments on non-agenda items, so we'll open the public hearing. Having no old business, we'll move into new business. Item number 1, the variance request regarding section 70-132C of the city code. The applicant, Steve K. M. Mr. Neri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Both items 1 and 2 are under the same section of Code 7132, right-of-way unpaved portion. As you heard Mr. Chairman say, item number 1 pertains to a very good idea that Madam City Attorney came up with not too long ago in regard to this very subdivision. It was how to have a subdivision gated but still be a city-maintained with right-of-way subdivision. And she came up with it by having an electronic gate that you pull up to and it just opens for everybody. Great. Now, what we didn't do at the same time was clean up the fact that that gate is actually within the city right-of-way. So that is going to be the variance that applicant is asking for first for the developer. Captain Tim Bullard, Deputy Fire Chief, is also here with you this evening. Have some of his comments at your desk for you to look at and answer any questions that he might have. And I probably don't need to remind you that the main reason that this section of code exists is for his department, for the fire department, and any other emergency management type services. That's what it's here for. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Any commissioners have any questions of staff, the applicant, or Captain Bullard?
Excuse me, didn't mean to slight you, Fire Marshal Payne. How soon we forget.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question of the applicant's representative.
Please step forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
Jess Griffin, Casey Drive, Maumelle, Arkansas.
Mr. Griffin, have you seen the comments from Captain Bullard about the gate and access, and you got a problem with complying with those?
No, we were just speaking about it. I think they're happy with everything. They might want me to move the access for the fire lane, the emergency access, a little bit further away from Lot 1 so that there's no obstruction in front of Lot 1. And then I'm going to paint the curb red for 60 feet along there and have signs marking that it's a fire lane on both sides of the street where it is at Kim Drive and,
I don't think that has to do with item one.
No.
is that not what you're asking?
No.
Are you talking about the gate in the
Yeah, the gate
gatehouse?
first, yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
What?
because the access to it and,
We spoke about that, and he said as long as the eaves don't hang over into the
That's item two.
roadway,
That's item
is
two.
that not it?
no, it's just, we're just talking about the gate and the location in the right
Just
of
the
way.
width of it?
Yeah, where it sits in there. And the operation of it, if the electricity was to be off.
It will have a emergency way to open the gate.
Okay, and then now to the second part of it, that lot one, that's not on this variance, is it, Mr. Neri, or is it?
No.
Okay.
No,
That should be either the
Plat.
plat or the development plan.
Okay,
And since you brought that up, if you please, Mr. Chairman, let me emphasize this for when we move on. This is a phased, staged PUD development, which means we're dealing with Phase 1 tonight. That's perfectly acceptable by our regulations, which means that is what is going to move on to the City Council when that time comes, is Phase 1, not the entirety of this development. You can make comments concerning the entirety of the development, but only Phase 1 is moving on.
okay.
Thank you, Mr. Neri.
And that was my question, was about the gates.
Yeah,
If you're,
and the gate at the emergency access also
right,
will have a manual way to open it.
and the location, you can set it where it needs to be so that,
Yes.
and then, okay. That's all I got, Mr. Chairman.
Any other commissioner questions or comments?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from Captain Bullard.
Captain, if you could please state your name and address for the record, please.
Captain Tim Bullard, Deputy Fire Marshal, City of Maumelle Fire Department.
Thank you, Captain. My question would be, have you seen the actual design of this gate that they're talking about?
No, sir.
Is that gonna be important for you to see that finally before you give final approval to this?
I don't think so. As long as the gate has a manual override for us, if that needs to be some kind of a lockbox on the gate where we can have key access or anything in event of a power loss, that's how we would need to gain access to the property.
Okay, just as long as you got plenty of room to get your apparatus into
Correct.
the subdivision. That's what you're banking on.
Yes, sir.
And that would also be under item 2 on this, the guardhouse too, as long as it's not overhanging.
Right. The way I understand it, the driveway in is 24 foot, and as long as it doesn't extend out more than the median really itself, then we're more than fine with that.
Okay.
The eaves of the guard shack.
That's all I have.
Any other questions or comments, Captain Bullard?
Not for this item.
Any other questions or comments whatsoever on this item? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve, it's in the positive, right? The motion to approve the variance request regarding section 7132 streets for right-of-way unpaved portion for Steve K. I am applicant.
I have a motion.
Pending any other comments, Commissioner's staff.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second, any discussion on the motion? Those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. All right. Commissioner, a point of procedure, does this go on to the city council?
It does not. This stays with the commission, as does item 2.
All right, variance is granted. Moving on to item number 2, variance regarding the same code regarding the unoccupied gatehouse for the / decorative entrance structure. Mr. Neri?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you look to those 2 median structures just to the south of the gate, of course, you'll see what we're talking about. Same section of code. And Captain Bullard is here to answer any questions on that you might have, or Madam City Attorney, if you wish.
Have any questions or comments by commissioners of staff, city attorney, applicant?
Question for the applicant, if you don't mind, and probably for the deputy fire marshal as well. What is the clear distance that's going to be provided between the edge of the guardhouse and the edge of the gate structure in the median?
I believe the median is back to curb is 17 feet, and so I put on there it would be no more than 14 by 14, or 14 foot wide of a guard shack.
And that would be so the guard shack would have, the distance would be what width from the edge of the eave to the edge of the gate structure?
1.5 foot on each side.
Okay. So
And
can
that's
we,
maximum.
sure. So there's virtually no, I mean, there's not clearance for an apparatus to pass between the guardhouse and the edge of the gate structure. 1.5 foot, right? We agree on that? Too narrow? I'm stating the obvious, so I just want to make sure that I understand that we're on the same page.
I mean, the gate will be 24 foot wide.
I'm talking about the space
So
between the gates.
Right.
Yeah, I think you can't correct. I think we're on the same page. So this manual gate entry of these gates, how does that work? So if they come up and the gate doesn't open and they're an emergency response, and I guess maybe what is your expectation of that design? I guess this is more for staff, Jess, so.
Okay. Well, we would have a lock gate at the sidewalk where the gate crossed the sidewalk.
Yeah, I don't know if
Be
you can
another
get
gate where you
an
can-
apparatus through a sidewalk. I'd like to speak with staff. Thank you. So what is your expectation regarding the design and the manual entry of these gates?
If it's in a closed position, we would like to see that it's either siren activated or pressure activated. I mean, some subdivisions have a keypad. Anything that we can trip it. Now, automatically, ideally, siren activated would be the ideal thing.
So, but if there is a malfunction of the gate itself, and that's what I'm anticipating to be manual, is that this automated feature, if there's a gate failure, won't work. So what would be your expectation of the gate opening then?
Us somehow gaining a manual, again, I haven't seen any specs on the gate. So with that being said, we would need to manually be able to manipulate the gate, whether it's by key and it unlocks the gate somehow and it opens, then it would be in an open position.
So how long do you think that would take?
Less than a minute, should, in an emergency situation. Should be readily identifiable, and as long as we have training on it, readily identifiable and easy to manipulate, and so we can get our crews in there.
Would you want a gate-mounted lockbox right there?
That has happened in that area. Across the street, there's a gate-mounted lockbox there.
So
My problem is with, what about MEMS? MEMS doesn't have our key box keys.
So regarding the gatehouse, I believe the applicant said the clear distance was 17 feet. Is that correct? I don't remember. He's studying something. So the applicant is like, what's the clear distance between, this may be estimated at this point, but what do you think the clear distance between the edge of the gates would be, between gate to gate on inbound and outbound traffic?
In the median, 17 feet.
So that's wide enough for your apparatus?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You know, my preference would be is that I don't really want you getting out and messing with gates if my house is on fire. My preference. And this is the first time we've had a public gated facility, period, in the city.
Correct.
Although we have gatehouses,
Yes.
my subdivision has a gatehouse, but it doesn't have,
Except you're not getting it anymore
Okay.
without a variance.
yeah, it has a gatehouse, but it doesn't have a gate. So, so you can access what I'm
Am I at
saying,
liberty to
cheap.
say Campbell Drive?
Or there may be one I'm not aware of.
And there could be one I'm not.
Okay.
Majority of them, I would say, the ones that I'm aware of.
This is the first I'm aware of.
Right. So we're kind of wading off into new territory here. My preference is not for you to get out of your truck. My preference is that if the gate is malfunctioning, it doesn't open, is that you have the ability to clear the apparatus between the gates in an emergency situation. So I'd like to ask the applicant, I know that he has a variance on the table and he may want to keep it there, but to remove the gatehouse and someone will make that curb a mountable curb so you can drive over it with your apparatus and go around the gate should it not open, and that provides you access without manual, just from an emergency standpoint.
Chief Payne, I saw you had your hand raised. Do you have a comment?
Due to past history, I'd like to address the commission, please.
All right. Name and address, please.
John Payne, Fire Marshal, City of Maumelle. In the past, we've had some difficulties with gatehouses. We prefer not to have gated communities because of the access problem that you're referring to. One of the things that the captain mentioned a while ago is Yelp activated, and that's one of the features of our siren where it comes on there and it's actually a pulse tone that triggers it and opens the gate up. That doesn't work if we're having a problem with the power for some reason in that area. Okay, and that does happen. Sometimes the fires themselves will trigger a power outage or blow breakers and stuff like that and cause problems. Most of the ones that we've dealt with right now have a manual activation where you have to actually get out, either trip something that pulls a pin out that we can swing and open manually, or we have to unscrew it, as in some of the industrial sites over here. We have to unscrew a deal, pull the arm off, disconnecting it from it so we can swing that open. And yes, there is a delay in that. We've had problems in the past. One of the subdivisions here had a gatehouse that we literally could not drive up the side of the street because of the overhang from the gatehouse into the street. So we were having to go in against traffic on the opposite side of it to be able to get in there in an emergency. Well, people flee from fire, so guess where they're coming out of. So, and when I went to expand that subdivision, we negotiated that being removed. It has been a problem in the past. This is the first one, as Madam City Attorney has put forward, is that when you pull up there, it's going to open. But there will be a delay. Whether or not, and this is a technology I'm not sure of, with that type of technology that opens itself, whether or not you could activate it with a Yelp, or some of them do also do the same program them in with our same radio channel, so if we key the mic, it opens it up on a certain channel. I'm not aware of a way to not delay when you have a gated community. That's part of the problem with a gated community.
We can, like I said, I'm not for this variance. But what I'd like to do, if we end up pulling the gatehouse out and them not provide that, and of course this is more addressed appropriately in the preliminary. We'll see where the variance goes, and then my next comments will be to address a section that will be able to handle the apparatus. Should my colleagues agree or disagree? So.
Yes, I'd be glad to comment on that now, if you'd want to, or I can wait.
Well, my preference is that for to be a mountable curb, can be aesthetically featured, something that you're acceptable, but where the apparatus, can pass. It can be brick, it can be pavers, it can be something that's aesthetically pleasing, but still yet can accommodate your apparatus.
There's a product that has been used here 2 or 3 different times to make something aesthetically pleasing, but yet be able to support the 75,000-pound requirement for our aerial apparatus. And it's commonly called grasscrete. Basically, it's a grid that goes underneath the grass, and the grass grows over it. It looks like grass until we get to drive on it, and then we kind of squish a little bit of the grass out of the way.
It'll be fixed.
But yes.
Save a life.
But it is certainly something that we could look at, sir.
I have no other. Thank you, Chief.
Any other commissioners with questions or comments? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Remember to make the motion in the affirmative.
Make motion to approve the variance request regarding section 7132 for rights of way unpaid portion. Steve K.M. applicant, pending any other staff or commissioner comments.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and multiple seconds. Any discussion on the motion? Those in favor, please say yes.
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 Those opposed, no.
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 Roll call vote.
Roll call vote. All right.
Or show of hands?
Let's go roll call. Go. Commissioner Johnson.
No.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
No.
Mr. Fisher.
Yes.
Yes.
Green?
No.
Ramsey?
Mr. Chairman,
No. The variance is denied. Moving on to item number 3, the revised preliminary plat for the M at White Oak Crossing. Mr. Neri?
yes, and if you please, Mr. Chairman, Chief Payne and Captain Bullard, some of the ideas that you had about surfaces, if you could pass that on to the Holloway firm and CC me on that, if you would, please. Thank you very much. That's the preliminary plat, the revised preliminary plat for the M at White Oak Crossing. I came very close this afternoon to changing my recommendation from a contingency approval to a let's defer, because I thought this was, and no offense intended, this is strictly business here. I thought it was a less than clean submittal from the very beginning. I had no word from Mazan on this until 5:26 this afternoon, which he says his comments from the original development still hold true. Haven't seen those, but that's neither here nor there. There was some housekeeping stuff. Of course, the simple fact now that the variance regarding the gatehouse has failed, that in and of itself is going to produce a redo. But we have something a little bit more than that, that Commissioner Todd actually found is going to change the way we look at PRD from now on. And Madam City Attorney and I looked at it for about an hour this afternoon, and the mayor and myself got to look at it together very briefly. And Mr. Griffin, you don't even know what I'm talking about because we just came up with it. And is this the first time this has ever been brought out before? Yes, it is. I'm sorry for your client that it happens to be on you, but that's the way it goes. Up until now, as far as bills of assurance are concerned, one city attorney before Mr. Mayor was city attorney ruled that because the city does not enforce bills of assurance, we don't need to be messing with them, so to speak. In other words, you don't even have to look at them. Just make sure they have one. So for the past 17 years, that's the way that we've approached this until Commissioner Todd found this in code. And I want you all to look at it. I didn't have time to run you all a section. It's section 94-454. I will provide you with a copy, Mr. Griffin.
What was that again, Jim?
94-454A. That's in the PRD section. This only holds true in PRD. The reason why this it's going to make a deferral probably mandatory because they'll never get this done in time for Melissa to have a chance to review this by the end of the day next Wednesday. Developers shall create such legal entities as appropriate to undertake and be responsible for the ownership, operation, construction, and maintenance of private roads, parking areas, common usable open space, common facilities, recreational areas, buildings, lighting, security measures, and similar common elements. The city encourages the creation of homeowner associations, funded community trusts, or other nonprofit organizations implemented by agreements, private improvement districts, contracts, and covenants. All legal instruments setting forth a plan or manner of permanent care and maintenance of such open space, recreational areas, and communally owned facilities shall be approved by the city attorney as to legal form and effect, and by the Planning Commission as to the suitability for the proposed use of the open space. That is the most important part of this ordinance really for you, which means now in PRD submissions, we'll be reviewing that bill of assurance for just exactly what I read, and you will be too. And Madam City Attorney will be looking at the legal language. I'm going to give this to you, Mr. Griffin. This is going to have to be done along with a few other things that I've outlined. So I think this is going to pretty much be making the development plan somewhat impossible to get on the next council agenda. But you need time for this anyway, because this is going to have to be done by an attorney. So with that being said, with satisfaction of all staff comments that you see left, the city engineer comments, that section I just handed Mr. Griffin in relation to the bill of assurance, the removal of the gatehouse decorative shell area, and the implementation of some type of grasscrete product or other acceptable product to the fire department, staff would recommend for a contingent approval. Now, let's all remember what contingent approval means. It's really not an approval. It's you all promise to do what you will do, which is approve this preliminary plat, as long as the developer, through their project team, does what they say they're going to do. They have a lot to do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions or comments by the commission?
This stays with the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I would have a question of Madam City Attorney. And that is, and I guess I've overlooked something here, and I don't know whether anybody else noticed this or not, but Kim Drive sits in North Little Rock. It's not Maumelle, so we have no control over that. It's also part of Country Club Development LLC. Right now, it's just gravel with some sort of a gate in front of it. How do we control, or how does the fire marshals ensure themselves that there's plenty of access coming through to get into this development?
I think that might be more of a question for the applicant or the fire marshal. If have you guys approved the Kim Drive entrance as an alternate entrance?
Not yet. It's action on the revised preliminary plat.
Which is part of staff comments, satisfy all fire department comments. Though, let's take River Point Drive, the entrance to the villas at River Point. The entirety of River Point Drive is in the city of North Little Rock. However, that's a fully paved, pretty nice road with a median. You're not in the city of Maumelle until you pass through those electronic gates at the villas at River Point. Somewhat of a different situation, but situations do exist where the entrance is from another city into the city of Maumelle, that being one of them.
Well, I guess my concern would be is that since it is not in our jurisdiction, when and if will this road be built? Who's got control of it? You know, you're gonna wanna see a road that's gonna be of sufficient size and structure to be able to handle your apparatus going through another city to get into there.
That's in that's in a later phase, is it not? Oh, that's in phase one? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's a question that probably needs to be answered.
Is that, the right-of-way is, although it's shown, there's no dedication in place, correct? It's not public as it sits today.
Says Kim, it's just drawn as Kim Drive, so that must be anticipated.
The other side of the street is owned by someone else.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Kim Drive or not. So that portion is not dedicated, it's not public right-of-way. The information is, ownership's not shown on the plat, unless you can direct me to it.
Already been approved by the city of North Little Rock for construction of all Kim Drive and of Phase 25 of Country Club of Arkansas.
Do you know
They're
when?
currently working on it right now.
Oh, at the
And
moment?
I would say that Kim Drive is more than sufficient to carry the fire truck. They're running dump trucks up and down that truck thing from McGeorge all day.
Have you
That was
submitted
built by
anything to our
McGeorge.
fire department about that?
No, I haven't, but I had it on the plan. That's where our emergency access was prior submission. I mean, we basically already had approval for the same deal. We just changed the property by making the lots larger, and we added a park. And we're just resubmitting in our minds. And now we're gonna have to get the hold off for a whole nother month to get the stuff. I mean, I'm more than happy to comply with whatever you want. I would really just ask for y'all to let us proceed with construction because we already have had approval on a emergency access on Kim Drive right here last time. It's a sufficient road to drive on. And then what was the other issue of, we added a big park in the middle. I mean, this whole middle strip is a park. And so we're just resubmitted and now we're gonna have to hold on for a whole nother month because we're gonna have to get this bill of assurance, which I'm happy to provide anyways. I wanna comply with everything. I just would like to get this approved. If there's no gatehouse, we'll just not do the gatehouse. We'll make a note of it. I can get you a new plat tomorrow without the gatehouse on it.
I think you've got bigger issues in the gatehouse.
What's
As
the-
far as meeting a deadline. That bill of assurance is gonna be quite the undertaking.
I mean,
And
we'll make
remember,
a bill of assurance and
the-
we'll make her happy.
remember,
We gotta comply, don't
It's
we?
Madam City Attorney that you have to please on this, and she has to have time to review. She's got a couple of other things to do.
And I think Bob Harden had worked with you guys on a draft bill of assurance when you thought the streets were gonna be private. I mean, that's obviously not gonna be, you won't need quite that much detail, but one thing with having a park that's private at this size in a neighborhood is that you've gotta have something to provide for maintenance of all that common
Yeah, I
space.
mean, we wanna have a good bill of assurance and we wanna have a good homeowners association and we wanna have good maintenance. I mean, we're trying to make this a nice neighborhood that's quasi-gated. We made it where there's a huge park in the middle of it, like a central park in the middle. It's 80 feet wide by 1,000 feet, 1,300 feet. And the lots now are larger. Beforehand, when we came with this and everything passed last time, we had like 4 and 5 duplexes or quadplexes. And so now we decided, we don't want to try to put as much stuff as we can on one piece of property. We want to make it nicer and have more parks and more amenities and a better living for people. And so that's what we're shooting for.
My question still comes down to the fact that this road providing access for the second access is in another city. Has anybody seen those documents to sit there and say that, yes, that's gonna be fine? You're saying dump trucks are running across it, that's fine, but that's not a permanent road that's coming in there.
It is a permanent road and it will be a
Right now?
permanent road.
Right now it's a permanent road?
I don't know the exact, but.
It's gravel.
It's already been approved, so I don't see how City of North Little Rock approved it without already approving a preliminary plat.
Hey Jess,
Preliminary plan.
is it a developer, driven improvement or is it a city driven improvement?
It's basically,
Or do you know? If you don't know, just say that.
from my understanding, McGeorge built the road, and he had been using it in and out from his property, and then they're using that road as part of the development. It's been approved through the City of North Little Rock as a project.
Okay. Is it a dedicated right of way? Dedicated
It will
right-of-way.
be, and I'm almost positive it already is. It might not be showing up because it's preliminary, it's a preliminary plat in which they did it,
So the title research didn't pull it.
but I can get you the document.
And do you know what specs McGeorge may have improved that road to, or what his construction schedule may be to fully improve that road?
He's not gonna do the work.
Well,
It'll be
whoever-
done by Tommy.
Then whoever is gonna do the work, because I'm envisioning the situation where this development is partially done and they need that access road, but it's torn up in partial construction, or it is in its current state not sufficient to support that
No,
apparatus.
they're gonna have it paved and it'll be, I'm
But the question
positive
is
that
when, and can you?
that
show us-
development's already getting worked on. It's gonna get done before this development gets done.
Well, and in my world, that's great if it happens that way. In your world, you've got 7 brand-new houses that are built. You've got all your street and infrastructure in there, but they're not gonna give you a CO because they can't use this secondary access, because it hasn't been built yet. That could be your future.
Right, or maybe
This is-
we work out a deal. I think it's 31 houses, or there's what's the fire code on how many houses? Before 30? Okay, before there's 30 houses that have been built, which I think it'll take maybe a year to get everything built. And then it'll take another 6 months to a year to get to 30 houses being built. So realistically, we're talking 2 years down the road. I would think that Kim Drive, with the money they're already investing in, they're already building the site, they've already done a lot of the dirt work and everything on that phase 25. The road's gonna be built.
Okay, is that the only access to 25?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's gonna be, it's like a 40-foot wide road. It's a very wide road.
So
And
I'm
if we
still
need to
getting
work
mixed.
out
It's like it's
things-
the city, but it's developer, your response
I mean,
has me
yeah,
indicated
it-
that's developer driven.
It was built by McGeorge, then basically Tommy owns the property back there. He's doing a subdivision. We've already got everything passed through North Little Rock, and I'm assuming already a preliminary plat because that's part of their phase. And we can get you the preliminary plat showing you the right-of-way of Kim Drive.
Dedicated.
Yes.
It can't be dedicated if it's
It'll be
under
a
construction.
dedicated right-of-way.
But it's not dedicated.
I believe it
Round
is.
and round. That's the first question.
I'm not telling you, I don't know, yes, but when I look at what's already been passed and what the process was, I can almost say, yes, it is dedicated. Because we've already gotten it passed through North Little Rock and construction's already began.
The final plat's been filed and recorded,
I don't know if the final plat's been filed
And
yet.
it's not dedicated.
then it's not dedicated.
What about moving this over here, Jess, on the east side? Just get out of this mess and come over here on the east side somewhere and go through the future commercial. You know, get the 30 days, just move it.
We can, yeah, we can move the, that's what it comes down to. We can provide another route to get there and not use Kim Drive.
Because
But we-
even if you do use
I mean,
Kim,
honestly, we have two 24-foot roads though,
yeah, I understand.
with the entrance, so that's basically two roads right there.
No.
Not if somebody's fleeing. Okay, well, if we've got one road and you can only build 30 houses, I'm okay. But when you try to build 31, you've got to have a secondary access.
Right.
Now, how we
I'm
hold
okay
you
with
to that,
Kim
I'm not
Drive
sure.
Once it's dedicated.
I'll look in to see when it, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I don't know how North Little Rock could be much different than us, Little Rock, or anyone else, but here a road's not dedicated until, of course, the city council accepts it, which we do early on, just like Little Rock, with the contingency being the signing and the filing of the final plat. Never seen a road dedicated without it being filed and recorded on the final plat. So,
I think the only thing we'll come up with is a preliminary development, whatever their equivalent is a plat and a preliminary development plan.
and nobody files and records those anyway.
Correct. I mean, that's the documentation that we would receive if it's not filed.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I got another. Jess, I'm not beating you up, but in your general notes,
Just running out the freaking north.
you say, where's it at? See development plan for road cross sections. See the development plan for the road cross
I
suggestions.
moved them, that's a bad note.
And again, but it's left in there. This is,
Right.
okay. And then.
It is the preliminary plat, I mean, we've got to get.
Yeah, I
We
understand,
got
I
the
understand,
file.
and you put them in there on the preliminary
I'm more than
plat.
happy to fix that.
No, you've got them in the right place. You
Right.
just left a note in there that's
Because previously, we
irrelevant.
did have it on the development plan.
Yes, and you took it off of that.
We figured out how to get more space on it.
Okay, and the other thing, when you, you get into looking at your, bills of assurance and your POA, don't forget you've got a gate and a fence that goes all the way around this structure that will need to be maintained. So that, you need to think about that.
I'm just asking y'all to work with us.
Well, and-
We
and
want to work with y'all. We just-
If
we
you're
don't wanna be
willing,
held up any longer. We want to
if
figure
you're-
out a way to get to the end so we can move on and get some development going on.
yeah, I'm trying to move on.
Mr. Chairman, are you through?
Yeah,
John?
I'm through.
The issue with the existing access, and Commissioner Fisher brought up an excellent idea. I didn't catch the North Little Rock to Maumelle, and I guess that deserves a drive out there every now and then when you get to it, so. But I've talked with Chief about this, is that you've got this access and we've got this thing curbed and it's a fire lane and, you know, you can't park here, you can't park there, and, you know, people are gonna park there. This house, that whole front of that lot is access easement for emergency. I don't know we've ever done that. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to be practical, you know, and I'm not for Lot 1. It just does not, and I know that that space is expensive and lots development, but just sure as like you can squeeze a lot, you know, and I'm looking at these corners back here. You got two here, taking a look at this. I know that it's not under construction, but I do not think that it is good practice to put a dedicated emergency access easement across a lot. I don't, because if there's cars parked there, you can't even get through it, regardless if you can get down Kim Road, and, you know, if and when it comes. And, you know, I'd like to see, I'd just like to see it moved, so we don't have to deal with emergency access easement in front of a lot, and we don't have to deal with waiting on Tommy to, or, you know, or waiting on another developer, the country club development, to make sure that this gets done and dedicated, and, you know, and you're saying they're gonna get done beforehand, you know. That developer's been in our town a long time, sometimes so, sometimes not, and sometimes they change their mind. So I don't know that I would, you know, that's why I asked if it was dedicated, and we danced around that for 5 or 10 minutes before we got to the bottom of it, and it's not.
When we were talking about the gatehouse, now that we're not doing the gatehouse and we're talking about a mountable curb, were you talking about a mountable curb for the median? So, I mean, that would be emergency access in itself.
That's
right
fire
there.
chief's department. I don't make those decisions.
But you can't, if there's an accident there and the house is on fire, how they getting there?
It's still a
I mean, we got
right
24,
both lanes.
17, 24. So with that span.
I mean, that's the fire chief's call.
70 feet or whatever that comes out to be,
Could one of y'all speak on that?
can you not have emergency access close to another access?
I think the code is clearer regarding, the
No.
chief address it.
Usually it is not in the same plane. The very fact that it's on the front of the property puts us at a disadvantage if there was something to happen on White Oak Crossing that would may cut off both entrances coming into that one. And the reason for the code being the way it is they're concerned about that. And that's why in the 30 number he was mentioning a while ago, is the code says that if you have over 30 houses with a singular entrance, then they all have to be sprinkled. Now, quite frankly, I'll be glad to do away with all the questions about that emergency access if you'll sprinkle all those houses in that area, but they don't want to. And that price is coming down tremendously as far as sprinkling residential. But putting them in the same plane, the same area, is not acceptable to the fire department. We're really pushing it, moving it over there, and he's still coming back out to White Oak Crossing instead of coming to Kim. The original one was at the very back of the development, and once we said that they would have to develop the road back there and put all that in place, and then which was like phase 2 or 3, they said, no, we'll move it up front. It's okay. My thoughts were the same thing as Commissioner Johnson was, is that they should have went straight out to White Oak Crossing from it instead of trying to curve around and put that in that lot like that. Did I answer your question, Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I mean, I understand where it's located from the standpoint of providing a more attractive lot for sale, but, you know, perhaps on the open space lot 1 to the future commercial there, the 2.21 commercial could be just as appropriate. I know there's a little bit more of a grade challenge there, but, I know there's a pretty good grade challenge that was overcome over there off of, on the latest emergency entrance that was just, I think, constructed. There's, you know, 7-8%. You were satisfied, anyway.
12%, I believe, is what it was.
Yeah, it wasn't, yes. I remember you brought your apparatus out here, and I believe on that one, did some demonstrations, so I remember.
Everybody thought City Hall was on fire.
Yeah, I did too.
Anything else?
Anything else, Chief?
So, no, sir. Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks.
Chief. I'd like, I guess, a staff question here. If, you know, I know that Jess wants to work here. if we can't defer, only the applicant can defer.
You can ask the applicant to
Right,
defer.
but, yeah, it's the applicant's decision. So if we vote and we're not comfortable with this preliminary development, or with this preliminary engineering, with the plat, or the development plan, either one, and it votes down, then he has to wait a year to resubmit?
I go back again to the contingent approval thing.
Sure.
I hope you guys can remember all the contingencies when somebody makes this motion. They've got a lot to do, okay? And it's not that they haven't been tried to help. I did something I didn't have to do for a couple of reasons. At the subcommittee meeting, I said I would come over the very next day and try to help you all as much as I could. I didn't have to do that. I did it for a couple of reasons. Number one, because of my physical condition right now, and for the past few months, you haven't had access to me as you usually would. Plus, Monday upcoming was a holiday. Nor did I know that you were going to be without the owner and CEO of Holloway Engineers for an entire week. You had to do all that by yourself. Quite a bit, and I know you had other jobs to do besides this. Be that as it may. But I tried to help as much as I could, so what I look at that day as a 60-foot right-of-way. The next Monday, Scott Grummer texted me and said, "Hey, Jim, do you know that there's a 60-foot right-of-way on the plat, 80-foot right-of-way on the development plan?" No. So I tell Mr. Griffin at 10 o'clock in the morning on the 21st, I get a text from him that says, "Nope, really, they're 80-foot on both." Okay? That is what I'm talking about. That's an example, though, of being in a hurry.
Sure.
Of rushing a job, a mistake that you wouldn't have made probably once in 2,000 times before that, but you're in a hurry. So, I mean, you could table this, but I'm telling you, a contingent approval with all they have to accomplish, it might as well at this point be a deferral. They got a lot to do. I'm going to make the same recommendation when we get to the development plan, is a due pass to the Maumelle City Council. They got a lot to do, and I'm not letting that go on the city council agenda until they've done it all. That's whatever you feel most comfortable with. Madam City Attorney may have another idea.
I mean, he's right, there are going to be a lot of contingencies, and it's just a matter of, if they feel like they're able to get everything done with the meeting coming up in less than 2 weeks.
We're not against, I know none of you commissioners are against development.
No.
Part of the Maumelle Municipal Plan from way back when, and it still says the same today, orderly development. All these things that Commissioner Fisher, Todd, who've been around longer than the rest of you, bring up, I've seen this happen too many times, so have you, Commissioner Johnson. Yeah, they're going to do, and they said they'll do, and I know this will be, and it never happens. Sometimes things work out the way we want them to, and sometimes they don't. And usually when they don't, the people who take it on the chin is the city of Maumelle, which is what I'm paid to help protect and what you volunteer to help protect. So in my opinion, a contingent approval here, they still got a lot to do. When you get the development plan, a due pass recommendation to the city council, they still got a lot to do. A lot, okay? I haven't seen anything from Mazan yet on the first set of plans that were turned in that they got a city council approval on. As far as conceptually, I'm okay with this. We can work the rest out in the construction phase. I'd like to see that. Hadn't seen that. That's my opinion.
Before we take any other comments, understand we have additional comments from city official. Mr. Grummer, could you please approach? And please state your name and address, please.
Scott Grummer, here at City Hall, 550 Edgewood Drive. I just wanted to make clarification. I was looking up on the internet as far as just clarifying some of the things that pass through North Little Rock on the Kiln Drive, because that was one of the questions as far as right-of-way. And back in April, the preliminary plat for Country Club of Arkansas Phase 25A went through Planning Commission, and the minutes from that showed that the preliminary plat was approved, as well as a condition, and there was a ton of contingencies on that development that they passed through, but one of the contingencies was to planning requirements before the plat will be signed, dedication of 60-foot right-of-way Kim Drive to White Oak Crossing required on the east border of right-of-way shall be the same as the west property line and the abutting property. So, so they did make the requirement contingency for that road to be finished before that development. And they also limited the number of lots, the fronting, to a maximum of 30 lots. So the first phase final plat to include Kim Drive connection to White Oak, phase 1 final plat to show a maximum of 30 lots, and then the phase 2 final plat can be recorded once a second entrance has been provided and written approval from fire marshal. So I just want to make that clarification on the Kim Drive concern.
When was that approved?
Yes, it was approved it came across in the March Planning Commission and approved, and then the minutes came up on the April.
10 months ago.
Yes.
Filed and recorded?
Well, no, it's a preliminary plat, it's not filed. So, but before they file the final plat, it's required to have that road completed. So they have to have it dedicated for the final plat to be filed. So anyway, it's under construction, but it's not dedicated, but it has been approved through the preliminary process.
Now, you say it's under construction, what are you saying? Kim Drive's under construction?
Well, the preliminary plat has been approved.
Okay.
So they have the time period in order to finish that. Normally, it's a 1-year time period from preliminary approval to the point that.
Unless work continues in the field.
Right.
And then it's indefinite. As long as you're turning dirt in the field, you can keep on.
You have 1 year to turn dirt.
Right.
The,
And they've done that.
we don't know for sure how far Kim Drive is coming south. I think this phase line is developed with ours. We don't know how far that is coming south with that first phase with Country Club, or do we?
It's back at the back corner, about
all the way
an
down?
eighth of a mile past the, I guess that would be the southwest corner of this whole development. So it's back there a little ways. There's a piece of property between the two.
That's what the plat shows, John?
That's what driving out in the mud does. You can see where they're developing and moving
I don't
dirt.
know if that's a big access road or they're.
Come on, Commissioner Johnson, you do that all the time, don't you?
Right, right. Well, the plat, I don't know how much is being dedicated as far as the
It's
first
illegal
phase.
for him to get his four-wheeler over there.
That's right. For the first phase. Anyway, that's just,
Well,
I'd like to get it off there myself. I've already made that clear.
I
That'd be
don't
one
really
way.
have a problem with agreeing with staff and voting favorably for this with a lot of contingencies. But
I think there's too many
the
contingencies.
motion will have to be rather lengthy in my, because we have.
I'm gonna say they need to defer, or if they don't want to,
Can we table it?
So,
Yep.
yeah, okay, so we can table it.
If they don't satisfy all of the contingencies, can they, and they get a contingent do pass, can they satisfy them in 2 meetings of the city council? Just wait for it to be put on the agenda until everything's satisfied?
I've never seen that done. Doesn't mean it couldn't be. But usually, you and I had this discussion about one of the prerequisites of putting the development plan on a city council agenda is an approved preliminary plat. Okay? Everybody takes the city engineer's word of, hey, conceptually, I like this, planning director. We can work the rest out in the construction phase. That's always been enough for everybody, because what looked good on a drafting table, when you get out in the field, maybe doesn't look that good. Everybody knows that. But the rest of it, and there's so many of these, and they're so important, I'd like to see them all satisfied before it goes on the agenda, unless you legally have another idea.
Well, that's just what I'm asking. If it takes them longer to satisfy all of them, is there any reason they couldn't wait until not the next city council meeting, but the one following?
I don't see there's any way they're going to make the next city council meeting.
Right.
That would be one of the biggest professional shocks of my life, which doesn't mean it couldn't happen.
But if they didn't make it to that meeting?
If they didn't make it to that meeting, certainly. If they got all their ducks in a row by the next meeting? Absolutely.
Okay.
And we've actually seen that before with the way that the meeting of the planning commission and the city council fall.
That's correct.
And, you know, I'm tired of looking at this thing. I want it to go on. I want it to be built. I want it to be built correctly. And I feel that if we give them this contingency, that's a carrot. And because if they don't fulfill their preliminary plat request, they'll never get the development plan to go on to city council in order to start moving dirt.
That's true, and once again, this part of code that you uncovered, Commissioner Todd, is going to make it, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, is going to make it that much more difficult for them to do that. Because once again, this is the first time we pull this six gun on anybody, so to speak, because it's the first time it's ever come up. Won't be the last.
Well, this is also, it's not a secret in the code, while we may have missed it as well, so did the applicant.
Correct. It's been there. It's
Yeah.
been there before any of us.
And had I not been looking at something we had discussed in engineering meeting, I wouldn't have found it, because I wish I could have found it 20 years ago when I first started on a planning commission. We would have a different city.
Mr. Mayor, comment?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really quickly, Caleb Norris, Mayor. I just wanted to point out, so y'all know kind of what's there. This isn't a threat that has come from the applicants or anything like that. We've not even discussed it. But we do have a preliminary plat that has been approved for a subdivision that, in my personal opinion, is less desirable. This has made changes to some of the layouts to change the style of the homes. It's made some changes to add more park or green space right there in the middle, which I think is more desirable. There's certainly concerns with the submittals, and I understand those. I would ask y'all to consider the implications of delaying this past the point where the applicants are wanting to make the changes and possibly wanting to revert to what has already been approved, which in my personal opinion is less desirable than what is being proposed. Thank you.
And I agree with Mr. Mayor. Even, and it doesn't matter that he's my boss or if he's not. If the applicant gets these things done and they're treading water waiting for the next meeting, okay, can't submit till now, can't submit till now, I don't consider that fair.
Well,
I don't consider that fair. I think if they get it done and get it done in a manner which allows them the time to get on the next city council agenda, they ought to be able to get right on it. That's my opinion.
Question for Madam City Attorney. I understand this resubmission of these revised preliminary plats is effectively a new submission. We're not bound by any previous decisions. Does that in any way nullify the previously approved submittals?
As far as I know, it wouldn't nullify the previously approved submittals. And I don't know what all the reasons were for changing the previously approved
no idea.
submittal. But otherwise, I don't know of any reason why it would.
If I
as
don't
long as-
overhear
I
you and
believe they're
Mr.
still-
Grummer talking in a engineering meeting, I don't know about it.
Yeah, I don't
Mr. Neri,
know of any reason why it wouldn't.
Sir,
I want to make sure I understood something that you stated earlier. So are you of the position, if we go ahead and pass this with this laundry list of contingencies, is that you would not recommend to place it on council agenda for approval until the contingencies are satisfied?
that's correct.
So they're waiting anyway.
Another procedure.
well,
Well, it's possible that they could get it finished before, or they could miss a council date because you deferred them an extra month. That's what I'm saying. If they got right on it, got somebody good to do that bill of assurance, satisfied all your contingencies, got a favorable response from Mr. Rahman, it's not impossible.
Then they have to form some, nonprofit or
Well,
other
that's
thing?
beyond me, how they do that. I've had a brief discussion with the mayor before we convened this meeting, and that is far beyond my pay grade. and I'm glad that it is.
Are you referring to a property owners association?
And how to do all those things that, I mean,
So what's required in the code is a proper, at this stage, is a proper bill of assurance to be filed with the preliminary plan in a preliminary form. Okay, so they filed a bill of assurance, but I don't think that Mr. Neri or myself even consider it to be in a preliminary form. It is very basic. It doesn't include any provisions on,
it's skeletal, but,
Right.
and I'm not defending the applicant. They did what they thought they needed to do, because we'd never used this section of code in the going on 18 years that I've been here. And I just learned about it at 3:45 this afternoon. Wouldn't have done any different, it made any difference if I'd have called Mr. Griffin and said, hey, guess what? Well, now you know. So.
but they do business with Bob Harden, who's an attorney who's very experienced in this area, and he could put together a proper
sure he
bill of
could.
assurance to address this issue. And I would think it would not, I don't know what his schedule is, of course, but I don't see it taking him an extraordinary amount of time. So even if they don't make it to the next council meeting, there'll be 2 council meetings before this body meets again.
That's
So
Well, that's what I was
that would
gonna,
save
could
them
we not advertise
time.
and have schedule a meeting for the subcommittee meeting night?
You have my recommendation.
Well, here's my requirements. So if somebody's making minutes over here, Miss Lauren.
Well, before you get into, I guess you're getting ready to make a motion.
Yeah, I can do it with the motion.
Well, but I do have one other question, and that is, as I understood from what we're talking about the bill of assurance, did you not say, or did not someone say that this body has to approve those 2?
In the preliminary form, you should have seen it.
Now, how are we gonna give you a contingency to say, okay, everything's fine, if we've not seen it?
Well, that's the same question I posed to,
So here's the language exactly from the code section. These legal entities shall be provided to the Planning Commission together with the filing of the final development plan and plat, except that the bill of assurance shall be filed with the preliminary plan, at least in preliminary form.
And, yeah, it's definitely preliminary.
Well, and it's not preliminary in that it's not even preliminary in that it doesn't create any mechanism for the maintenance of the common
It
area.
doesn't satisfy the code requirements.
Once it's in a preliminary form that does satisfy the code requirements for care of the common areas and those types of things, then it can be reviewed. But technically, the Planning Commission is supposed to be, it's supposed to be going to the Planning Commission with the filing of the final development plan.
well, and therein is another issue that I talked about with Madam City Attorney. If the final development plan doesn't deviate from the preliminary development plan among certain criteria, you won't see it, because that'll be approved at my desk. And usually, if there's that big of a deviation, you're gonna go back to square one anyway. So now, I can send you the bill of assurance.
That's my question.
I can send it to you. If Madam City Attorney thinks it doesn't deviate from the preliminary bill of assurance, same.
It's a part of the contingent.
Yeah.
So are you saying, Madam City Attorney, that, I'm just trying to just get a point of procedure here, is the application inadequate, or is the application adequate in regards to the requirement of this code?
As it stands now,
Inadequate.
inadequate.
So we have to make contingency that he's going to do it right, then when he didn't submit the requirement, which is not just his fault. I
Well,
understand
no,
that.
it's not their fault at all.
Understand that.
That's why I was suggesting a meeting on the subcommittee, because then 3 days later is city council.
You have my recommendation.
We have the final plat. Nothing can be done until the final plat's done. I mean, we have plenty of time to work together.
That's what I'm trying to, and
We're gonna have to get to a point to where it's final plat.
that's what I'm trying to say.
and all that.
No money is going to be made by the developer until all of these things are done, until the final plat is filed and recorded. The city council has accepted these streets by ordinance. Nobody makes any money. Nobody sells any houses. No deed legally exchanges hands until all of these things are done. So if they were to be able to get these things done, not the next council meeting, but by the next, I see no reason for them to be held up. That's just my opinion. I've said that about 5 times now. That's enough.
I mean, y'all, their power is there. Y'all don't lose the power by giving me approval to move on with the project. We still have the final planning, the final plat approval.
They get to move on
We
with
gotta work
satisfying the
with y'all.
contingencies
We
is what
will
they
work
get to
with y'all.
move
We're
on
gonna work
with.
it out. It's gonna happen.
I did want to point out one other thing as far as the Planning Commission's review of the Bill of Assurance. It is to be approved by the city attorney as to legal form and effect and by the Planning Commission as to the suitability for the proposed use of the open areas. I know there's been some question over what these open areas are going to be used for. I did just want to point that out since the commission will need to approve that.
Well, no, we're not going to approve it. It's going to be some contingent language that you're going to work it out. I guess we'll turn it over to you, because it's not going to come back before us.
Well, I thought we just said that we were going to look at it at the.
It's no official meeting. He's going to email it to us.
I was going to send it to them unless
I'm not
you
gonna read
think
it.
we can do that.
I mean, I don't know what comment. I guess I could offer some comment, but there would be no formal action from the commission on it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to put forth a motion at this time. I'd like to put forth a motion to table this until the next meeting.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second that. This is too much.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no.
No.
Mr. Neri, if you would, once the applicant puts this together, and considering it seems to be the importance of moving things ahead, would you please notify us and see if that we can get quorum so we can have a special meeting of the Planning Commission to be able to meet a schedule?
I will do that. That is at the approval of Mr. Chairman. I contact him. If he's okay with it, then we see if we can get a quorum.
Absolutely.
I would agree with Commissioner Johnson on.
I would too.
Trying to have a special meeting to move this forward.
I'll tentatively agree with that. And quick question for Madam City Attorney. How much notice do we have to give the media?
I believe it's 7 days.
It is.
The subcommittee meeting will already have been noticed, so when it is a public meeting.
Now, unfortunately, I still have multiple doctor-surgeon appointments from now until I guess I'm fixed or whatever. I will do my best to be at whatever meeting we come up with. I can't promise I will be.
Understood.
Understood.
All right. Item number 3 is tabled. Moving on to item number 4, the revised preliminary development.
I'm gonna make the same recommendation.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd make the motion to table the revised preliminary development plan also.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Those in favor, yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. Item number 4 is also tabled.
Can you explain to me what it means by tablet, what the effects of this are?
Madam City Attorney?
So if something is tabled, it's essentially just in limbo, may not be the right word. It's set aside until it's brought up again. So it can be at the next meeting, there can be a motion to reconsider your request, and it'll be considered at that time.
But
Or
All meeting.
we've all agreed that you get everything satisfied with Jim, and he will see if we can get a quorum and have a special meeting just for this.
But that must be publicly noticed with
7
7 days
days,
notice. so-
But the subcommittee meeting is already a public meeting. It's already out to the media. So worst case scenario, we could meet on the 3rd.
weeks.
It's February the 13th, and the council meeting, the next council meeting is the 17th.
So in 2 weeks, you could, if you get your stuff together and then get it back in front of us,
my
there would be
question
no
would
loss
be,
in
could you
schedule.
have the other applicants there for a regular subcommittee meeting and have what amounts to a special meeting of the Maumelle Planning Commission at the same time?
I mean, essentially, it's the same body that's meeting and it's noticed. So if you have other applicants, I mean,
We would
could-
just have to meet in here.
Convene
I
and
was about to say,
reconvene?
we really, it would be more appropriate to meet in here and
Okay.
have it recorded and then consider
Okay.
other business that's on the.
When does the notice, is the notice worded as such where it's just we're noticing it as an official meeting, or is it, I don't know how, you can change the notice.
It says special meeting. I've
Okay,
done it before.
so it would satisfy the requirement to press.
Okay, I would like for you all to go back over all the contingencies that you can remember. City attorney, city engineer, fire department. What else?
As far
North
as
Little Rock.
I'm not in support, especially since Commissioner Fisher says that, the emergency access should be moved. We don't need it in front of any lot. And then the guardhouse the guardhouse needs to come out for the same reasons that I think Chief supports as well, too. Those are my,
Okay, well, the guardhouse is coming out.
Yeah.
That didn't pass.
yes, correct, yeah. Well, but we didn't hold that's true. Yeah, it does hold. It's true.
And the redesign of that whole area.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have to see it. I mean, we can condition it. I don't need to see a formal, as long as it's mountable and can hold the apparatus, I'll leave that to Chief. But, the lot, one doesn't have to go away. I just don't want the access to Kim Road because it seems to be messy with North Little Rock. Let's just put it, as I suggested, somewhere to the front side.
My recollection is the contingencies relate to the relocation of the fire access and the legal documentation in those common areas and the fence and any other issues addressed in that subdivision code.
And if you have under 30 houses, you can get by with
Yeah, if they want
us
to change the lot.
with
Yeah, if they wanna
with a
change the
single
phase out.
access until you get the second one built.
That's an option, too.
So, that's one option.
And that might be your best option.
Yeah.
Do phase one is 30 lots.
Let Kim go ahead and develop out.
Let that develop out, and then you want to have
Do we
this
need to
big.
change anything to get approval for that at least tonight?
Well, I mean, whenever
We don't
you
have a
come
preliminary
back,
development plan, we tabled
Been
it.
tabled.
you talk,
Tabled.
offer that,
We're just saying, that we're giving you some suggestions.
yeah. We're not designers, we're not supposed to be. We're just supposed to look at your design, and we've got issues. So just come back with fewer issues and we'll be better.
All right.
Oh, and on this, while we're talking about this same thing, whenever you go in and look at 94-454, the BOA, Bill of Assurance and all that, you might want to look at 94-451, 2, and 3, right before it. Because that's got a lot of good information in there that I didn't know was back there. I read this book, but very seldom do I get through the whole thing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Todd. No further comments. I will now close the public hearing. We'll move on to council liaison reports. November 4th was mine. A few items related to the Planning Commission. Resolution 2019-31 approved the preliminary development plan for Benson Park. Resolution 2019-32 approved the preliminary development plan for Fountain Blue Edition. Those are the two commercial developments on Country Club Parkway. Ordinance number 988 had first reading to approve the master street plan to address the removal of proposed roundabouts, and resolution 2019-39 regarding the conditional use permit of Calvary Chapel and the old U.S. Pizza was approved. November 18, Commissioner Ramsey.
Man, that was a long meeting. 13 minutes, 18 seconds.
Thank you.
There was really, only thing was the second reading on amending the master street plan for the roundabouts. It was the second reading. That was the only thing.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. December 2nd, Commissioner Todd.
Let me see, we had, mine was pretty quick, but not as fast as the other. We had the third reading of ordinance 988, which was amending the master street plan that was removing the roundabout. And, that was actually all that was, pertaining to the planning commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Todd. December 16th, Commissioner Johnson.
It was approved. The master street plan amendment to the cul-de-sacs.
Anything else?
Nothing else. It was a pretty heavy agenda, but there wasn't anything else regarding planning commission action.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson.
That's the way to do it.
January 6th, Commissioner Green.
Well, I attended that meeting, and it wasn't anything to the planning commission, but I would also refer people to watch the video.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Green. And January 21st, Commissioner Smith.
No planning commission related business was discussed.
Council liaison assignments for February. February 3rd, Commissioner Fisher is yours. February 18th is mine. No other items on the agenda. Do we have a motion?
Motion adjourned, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Second. Motion and a second. All approve, yes?
Yes.
We're adjourned.
I think all that work that y'all did initially, Melissa, can
You got a big chuckle out of it.
Is it,
Watch the video.
it would. All that initial work that he did initially.
did you submit?
He'll just take that same vote.
Told me anything I had not.
So good, maybe it can come together quickly.
Yeah, I looked at the capital agenda for the
share in
upcoming
the
meeting.
future.
Virginia.
We'll be looking at more of
Where's the
these.
mayor? That's him.
Coming down the road, what a mess. Pisses me, I mean, I don't.
We're appointing you commissioner for life.
No.